Yo, Ian, it's Frankie. It's 1:30. I hope you're well. In the annals of the absurd, I have someone who wants to take me to court who is a resident of one of my units, and he printed out as part of his packet of information 10 perfectly acceptable reasons to lie at work as a proof that I am a liar. This podcast does nothing but put off positive effects.
Ooh, loyal listeners, you're in for a treat. One of our loyal subscribers that we didn't even know existed reached out to us from France with a bunch of questions, and Frankie and I thought, what the hell? Why don't you jump on the podcast with us and we'll do this live. So this is our first episode of its kind where we do some live consulting with a young go-getter in France who is looking to move from a technical role into sales. We had a blast doing this. There's a lot of really good nuggets for just about anyone in their career. And I would also use this as an opportunity to say, if you are one of our regular listeners and you would like to do something similar where you come on this podcast and get some live coaching from Frankie and I for free, which I don't know about Frank. I give away stuff more than him, but he charges thousands of dollars an hour for that kind of stuff. Reach out to us. Send us an email. Reach out on LinkedIn. Let us know what you think. And if you'd like to do that in a way where we keep your name anonymous because you're worried about your company hearing it, we called this fella Milosh the whole time. That is definitely not his name, and we are not going to show his face. So we could do the same for you. If you're a longtime listener, you've not given us a 5-star review, shame on you. If you are new, hit the subscribe button. And if you love this episode, share it with your friends.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Mathews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
You can't say God.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
Ian, you son of a bitch!
Frankie, we got a special guest today. This is a big deal. This is unusual for our program, but one of our international fans, which we found out we had in this past week, is joining us. Our main man, Milosh, which may or may not be his real name because he is asking questions while working for an employer. Today is here. Milosh, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
We're doing good. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming from France, from the center of France.
Awesome. So Frankie, we have listeners in France. That's incredibly exciting.
Sadly, we don't have the budget that they have on 60 Minutes. Like, we can't do like one of those like composites or like one of those dark screens, you know what I mean? Like, we can hide you. We're gonna probably just put up like a cartoon figure or something like that.
We should have a green we can afford. Of the Eiffel Tower behind him though, so it seems more legit. It seems more legit.
A Christmas ornament down the Eiffel Tower. I could take a picture of it.
I think more of our savvy listeners are going to think it's some guy at Cava Company's office in Richmond with an accent. I think that's
just around the corner. Exactly. Behind the wall.
So we've been talking with Milosh for the last half hour, and Milosh works for a large company, and he has a mechanical engineering background, and his position, you're in quality engineering right now?
Yeah, right.
All right, so he works in quality engineering, and he aspires to be more in a strategic position in the company, some strategic direction, marketing, and his questions center around. We're going to answer 3 or 4 big questions that he has for us, but his questions really center around how he can pivot, how he can transition. Right now, he has a brand which is very technical within his company and really in his industry. So what are some ways that he can start to pivot and start to position himself so that he can start doing different things? Is that a good summary, Milosh?
It's fine for me. It's clear, and everything is included. So you can start.
Okay, awesome. So what's your first question for us?
So my first question was how to, or what is from your point of view, the ideal way to do the move from a technical or quality profile to sales or business profile, internally or externally in general, how to gain credibility of the person who is working in the business and sales field coming from technical backgrounds.
Okay, so Frank, let's start with Milosh told us that his company is good. It's been good to him. He likes the company. It's growing, likes the direction. So let's start with the internal. If you were to stay within the company, I think if you want to be in sales, you have to understand who makes decisions, especially in your business, which is a B2B business. You have to understand who is going to influence the buying decision. And in my opinion, this is your first big sale. At this point, any good salesperson is going to do a lot of homework. They're going to do a lot of research, and they're going to try to understand, to get a decision out of this company, who all are the decision makers and what are they motivated by. And so right now, you need to be in a position where you're thinking about all of the sales positions in my company are decisions made by multiple people, right? So it's normally a sales manager, that person's manager. It might need an executive sign off. There may be an influencer involved, like human resources, things of those nature. So within a company's hierarchy, these decisions aren't made in vacuums. So what I would say is one of the first things you have to start doing is researching how are decisions in my company made, and positions that are filled. Who makes those decisions? Something else that you have to understand. And then what are the criteria they use to fill those positions? So the way you can go about doing some of that research is, I think the simplest way to go about it is to directly reach out to people that are in the job you want to be in next. So if that is an account manager position, if that is a sales rep position, it could be a frontline customer acquisition position. I don't know what your company calls it, but there are people doing that job today that know how they got into the job. They are the easiest people for you to get in touch with. That's easier to talk to that person than it is maybe a senior executive that is making a position. We'll get to that. I think you should talk to them, but I would start with talking to as many of those people as you can that will talk to you. And, with Zoom and Teams and all these other tools, pretty easy to get 20 minutes of someone's time and just say, look, you're in a position that I aspire to be in one day. Can I get 15, 20 minutes of your time and really understand, what you do? Because you really need to, if you're going to go convince someone that you deserve a sales position, that someone should give you a chance, you have to be able to tell them what that person's doing all day, what their objectives are, what their measurables are, what kind of skills and talents it takes to do the job. And then you have to think about, how do I position myself in what I do every day to pivot and show the decision makers that I have what it takes to do that job and that I understand what that job is. And I'll quit talking and let Frankie jump in a little here.
So I have a question for you first. Has anyone else blazed this path at your company? Has someone moved from the technical role to the role you hope to aspire to?
I'm not sure, but similar paths were possible. Let's say
okay. So Ian and I both went from technical roles to sales roles. And what I can tell you is the technical side and the sales side are very different depending on what you're going to be selling. I was selling houses and I was writing down like the inventory code of a fireplace, and a salesperson training me said, it doesn't matter. Like that just confuses people. It's fireplace. It's all they give a crap about. They don't care about the MSRP number. So what I think you need to understand, number one, is the vocabulary. Second, if there isn't a path at your company to move from the role you're in, to the role you want to go to, you may have to think about looking at a different company. Some people have blinders on, where other companies like the one that Ian and I used to work for both have, and this is why we're keeping your name private, both have what we either call a path or a ladder. So you can move from one role to the next, to the next, to the next, and it's kind of a cross-training program. So I'm going to assume for a moment this company has promoted from within, and they have moved people from your role into the role you hope to go into. The first thing that Ian said was talk to people who do the job, and I agree with that completely. The other thing to do is there someone who has done that transition? What is it like? What are the things you can glean? What do you need to learn further in your current role? What can you do to prep? Prep comes down to basically, I would, 2 or 3, I'll say it's 3 components. One is understanding the role and talking to that person and getting an inside knowledge. 2, what can you read? What can you learn? What can you gather before you make that transition, giving yourself the skill set to have a smooth landing? What a company wants is, if you're a productive employee, they don't want to lose an unproductive employee and move them to a role where they're not productive. So they think of the big picture, and you have to think of, how do I make sure I can hasten the curve and get here quicker? The third thing I think you need is champion. And Ian was kind of alluding to this, but someone who will say, Milosh is the man. He's great at this job. He's trained someone to take on his responsibilities, and he can move into this role for these reasons. So if you have those things kind of going for you, you understand your current job and you're great at it. You've got a replacement coming in behind you. You understand the shortcomings you're going to have. You might not know them all, but you're going to understand those. And you have someone who will champion you, not only promoting you up, but helping you understand where your shortcomings are when you get to that role, and will help you smooth out those edges and create more of a soft landing. I think those are big things to have.
Have you expressed, Milosh, to your direct manager, have you expressed the desire to work in sales to make this transition?
Yes, exactly. We have discussed about it several times before, and he pushed my demand or my desires to do it to the human resources. And yes, it was taken positively, in fact, that I want to pursue my career in the same company. So he was encouraging that. Yes. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is be careful about it got sent to human resources. That they're not going to help you. The decisions that get made in companies are usually made with the people that are most forceful and push their way to a decision. So that's kind of a blow off thing of I've pushed it to human resources. In almost every company that I've ever seen are just reactive. They kind of react to things that are happening. They're usually not proactively thinking about people's career paths. The only person doing that is you.
I'm gonna interrupt too. HR departments, human resources departments, all they really care about is not doing anything that makes them be in the spotlight and puts their job at risk. Like, they're not going to take a risk for you, especially if it's something that the path hasn't been blazed. Absolutely no way in hell will they champion that cause, because they think deep down, this could cause me my job.
Yeah, all accurate stuff. So, but what one thing I did hear there that I liked is your manager didn't try to dissuade you. He didn't try to say, don't do that, stay where you're at. He said, okay, I understand. And he was open to you pursuing it. Is that true?
He was very open to it, yes. And he even, with the HR, they even advised me to go and discuss with the people really who are making the decisions and get some information about what they are doing and promoting my profile. So
okay, this is all really positive. This is all very positive, because Frank is right. No one knows your work better in your company than your direct boss. So even though your direct boss hasn't seen you sell, he's seen your work ethic. He's seen your positive attitude,
problem solving,
your ability to hit results,
communication skills.
Yes, he's seen so many things that translate to sales. In my opinion, companies are much more open to taking a technical person and teaching them sales than taking a salesperson and teaching them technical. And the reason is it's a ton easier. No one in sales went to school to be in sales. And if they did, they wasted a lot of money, because You don't go to college to learn sales. You pick the phone up and start calling customers to learn sales. Whereas if you just took a salesperson who said, I want to be an engineer, you can't just teach someone to be an engineer on the job. They're going to screw that up. It's a lot easier to go learn the sales side, and that it takes some courage to do the sales role, but it doesn't take a lot of technical skill whatsoever. So I think that's a really good thing that your manager would be positive about this, and he's talking to HR. But I think bigger than HR, who's the manager you would report to? You need to understand that. So if I were to take a sales role, who are the bosses over there? So you have a manager over you who's over the quality engineers. There's a manager over the sales folks. Who is that person? Do you know that person? Do you know who those, or is it multiple managers? Do you know who they are?
There are multiple managers, and they're not all located in the same area. So it's difficult to predict with whom I will get the opportunity, in fact.
Okay, so what I would do, and I think this is in order. So I love what Frank just said. You've got a sponsor, you've got someone who's positive about this, who would support you making some progress, who's already tried to start to help you. I think the next step is go start talking to as many sales reps as will take calls with you, that will talk to you. Learn the job, learn what they got into. I love Frank's idea. Find someone who transitioned. And the truth is, Milosh, everyone had to learn sales on the job at some point. So when Frank says find someone who kind of went from technical to sales, maybe it wasn't in your company. It's perfect if you can find someone who went from within your company, but all of them kind of had to learn sales at some point on the fly. We all do. No one really is ready for sales until you get on the phone with the first customer. So learn from all of those folks. Once you've talked to enough of them, then reach out to sales managers. Reach out to the managers who manage the sales reps and ask them about their hiring needs. Ask them about their team. Ask them if they plan on adding some salespeople. Have they ever taken a risk on someone? And let them know you've done a lot of homework, that shows that you're ambitious, that you're eager, that you're a quick study, and say, I've learned from your sales reps that the best qualities of the sales reps that do this job are A, B, C, D, and E. I would love to tell you how I exhibit those on a daily basis in my job as a quality engineer, and I have a passion to move to sales. That's the approach I would be taking if I were there, is I would be trying to figure out who makes all the decisions and what do they base those decisions on, and how do I learn as much as I can about the position so that I can think about how to position myself as the best person to do
it. Another thing that I think is relevant, and I think we moved the question to, whenever you're seeking advancement, do you know what the best way is to seek advancement? From a job performance standpoint, the thing that you really want to do is excel. Now is the time you want to be doing so well in your job that people notice. You don't want to look distracted, and you don't want to look like you're thinking about other things. When someone tells me they're getting ready to get promoted, I tell them to act like they're about to get fired. Be at their absolute best. There's absolutely no holes in your game, and you're not distracted. You're the opposite. You're steely-eyed and focused. And if you're looking for advancement and you're acting as if you have a zero margin of error, what will happen is people will look and say, this person has desire, but they're incredibly good. We can't not promote them because look at this performance.
And if you're talking to the hiring manager, the sales manager, that gives you just a lot more credibility. If you can tell them there's 15 people doing my job and I'm number one in 5 of the 6 metrics we have. I'm a performer.
Even if you're top 3, I'm at the top in all of these.
I'm a performer because they're going to look up your numbers anyway. So know your numbers, know how you're performing. Sales, this is something else you have to understand. Frank was talking about the vocabulary of sales. I've been an engineer. Engineering, everything can't be measured. There's a lot of testing. It's slow. There's a lot of design. There's a lot of hurdles you're getting over. Sales, everything is a number. Everything is a statistic. How many sales, how many new leads, how many opens, what's your close rate, what's the margin on your sales.
How much are we making?
Salespeople and sales managers have a very specific language, and it is all measured. It is like a sport, right? Where every athlete has a card and you know the exact numbers. So you have to be ready to talk that language when you talk to sales managers and sales reps. So when you are talking to those sales reps, ask them how they're measured, ask them the important metrics, ask them what the numbers are that they have to pay attention to, and be ready to talk about that with the sales manager, because it's very different language than engineers, where some of the goals are very long-sighted, right? Long-term. Sales is, what'd you sell this week? What'd you sell this month? How many new leads? What's your pipeline? What's your forecast? You got to talk those numbers.
Great.
So what's question number 2?
Okay. So the question number 2 is externally, how to get, if someone is moving today, he's having a technical profile, and he made the decision to change his career or make a shift to sales or business in general field, how to do it and how to gain credibility in the interview. Should he take some courses? I don't know. Or how could he do this shift, in fact?
So Ian, let me jump in first. So the question is basically, how do you gain credibility, or what's the arc to give yourself the opportunity to have this chance? Is that a fair way to put it?
Exactly.
Okay. So the interview is one thing, but you've got to get the opportunity to be interviewed. So it's the lead up. Everything we just talked about is part of it. If Ian used the term vocabulary to summarize what I said, that's part of it. Having a champion, having someone else that's going to support you in this move, chatting with other people, being prepared before you get there is a big part of it. And it's the moves, preparing. What I go to in the arc is, this is something that I did multiple times in my career. I'd be promoted and I would go from being really good at a job to really bad at the next job. So you're a high level performer, and because there's a transition, you're not nearly as good. And then there's this weird period in between when you were recently promoted where you know you're not as good as you were at the last job. So if you went back, there would be some kind of you're just not as good because your timing's off or something like that. And then you're not quite as good in the new job because you're still learning it. So there's this awkward transition point. Like you're riding a bicycle, it's like with the gear shift. That's part of it. So what I would think about is, if you use the analogy of a bicycle with gear shifting, what's the grease? What's the grease that you, in the transition, can make that gear shift smoother? And once you get into the interview, talk about it. I know I'm good at my job for these reasons. I know the skill sets that I learned in my last job are going to help me for these reasons. Here are the things that I need to learn or do better at to succeed in the next job. I already know them. And this is the plan that I have. I have won every interview I ever went into when I used that approach. I talked about what I knew was coming, what I knew my shortcomings were, what I thought the training was. And I told them I had open-mindedness around hearing more, of course, from people who are experts, but these are the things that are ahead of me. That shows anticipation, it shows preparedness, understanding and humility about what's coming next, and knowing there's a transition point. The CEO of your company was not deemed CEO day one, correct?
Yes.
There's a path. Everyone understands the path. Everyone understands being promoted. That's part of the process that I think once you get in the interview room, and if you talk about those things, it shows an open-mindedness, a willingness, and a real understanding about what's coming.
And so I'll just add one other thing. So in your job as an engineer, you persuade people all the time.
Exactly.
So, when a sales manager, the kind of questions we ask in sales positions are, tell me about a time you changed someone's mind. Tell me about a time where you sold a tough idea. Tell me about a time where someone said no to you initially and you convinced them otherwise, and how did you do it? We ask all kinds of questions like that. about overcoming resistance. And I'll just share with you a quick example for me so all of my internships when I was in college years ago were all engineering internships. So I was doing mechanical drafting work, engineering work, and I had no sales internships. And the interviewer at General Electric, where I was interviewing with, kind of called me out on it. Said, "You've never been in you have no sales history. Not even a restaurant on your resume. They're all technical, right? I have 4 engineering internships. They were great jobs, but I wasn't selling." And she said, "You've never sold." And I remember this answer like it was yesterday. It was a very challenging question. And I said, "Have you ever worked with the union in Detroit?" And she was like, "Yeah, actually, I was with a tier 1 supplier in Detroit. I lived in Michigan." I was like, "Oh, wow." This was in Virginia, Charlottesville, Virginia, where I interviewed. And I said, "Well, then you could understand and appreciate this. I had to convince union workers that a design change I made on a hinge was going to reduce one of their laborers' jobs by 4 hours a day. And I had to convince them to not fight back and to not push back and say it's bad, because it was making their job easier, which you do that enough and you take union jobs away." And she was like, "Wow, how did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I made friends with them. I worked with them for 2 years. I actually went out and worked with them all the time, would roll my sleeves up, do extra work with them. When they didn't have people on the weekends, I would go do the manual laborer's job. So they saw that I cared and I was out there listening to them." I said, "But more than anything, a bunch of the changes I made sure to give them credit for it. Like, I didn't come up with any of those ideas. I made sure to tell them these 3 guys on the line helped me come up with this design." So they felt like they owned the change and they supported it when we went out on. And so I told this long story, which had nothing to do with selling anything for money, but it took a lot of selling to convince the union to agree to a change that would take union time down. And she loved it. That answer really resonated with her. I used an engineering example to show that I was a good salesperson. And you need to kind of think about, if I do get a chance to interview, where are the areas in my job where I'm being persuasive? Where are the areas where I'm selling my boss on making changes? Where are the areas where, as a quality engineer, maybe I'm talking to a drafting engineer, a mechanical engineer, and I have to convince them that we should make some changes in a process and overcome their egos? You want to be able to talk through examples like that from your job that are persuasive in general, and in nature. When you get a chance to persuade someone, are you persuasive, and how do you go about doing it? And have you had success? Those are the things you're going to be able to talk about in an interview that have nothing to do with actual sales and marketing, but everything to do with the skill that will make you successful in sales and marketing.
So what Ian said was incredible. It was really, really, really good. And it's also something that whenever I was in the process of interviewing, I'd always have either my top 10 list or my successes list. And what Ian's talking about is success and an example of selling. So the things that you're doing, write those down. I used to literally have a binder and I used to keep track of these things. And these were the different stories that showcased, in Ian's example, negotiating with the union. And you never know when that story is going to come up. But if you keep a Rolodex or you keep a list of your successes, and as you're being promoted, you keep adding to that, they're compelling stories that signify and demonstrate a skill set. Like, I was interviewing someone yesterday, they could not tell me a compelling story about anything. All they said is, "I'm confident and I can do it." They didn't get hired because I couldn't see the vision. I couldn't understand it. And in Ian's story,
trust me, I'm your guy.
Right.
Trust me.
That gets a call from the HR department, says you're not the fit.
Yes, exactly. So Milosh, your last question, we only got a couple minutes left here, but your last question, it was around, if you were going to invest time in getting better as a salesperson, if you were to get this sales position, should you focus on the technical aspects of the product and the application, or is there something else you should be focusing on to develop yourself? Did I use that question right?
Exactly. Or even before, for example, before moving to sales, if I'm selling technical products, should I do a move towards project management or technical account management before doing sales, or it should be done directly?
So a role in project management will broaden you, and it'll get you more familiar with execution. So I do think humility is a big part of being a salesperson. And because at some point you always get humbled. Frank will tell you, as his co-host, I have legendary humility, which is what makes me so great at sales. Look at his face. No, but it is important to understand, after you sell, a project manager takes it over, and a great salesperson sets up the sale so that the project manager succeeds. Because if you don't do that, your customer is going to come back to you as a salesperson to be upset. So understanding how a project manager's job works will help you understand the product, the application much better. It can make you a better salesperson. I don't think it's necessary. I do think, and I guess I'll just share this with you. When I moved into sales at GE, if there were 110 sales guys and gals across the country, and I was 110th in product knowledge, and that stayed that way for 3.5 years while I was selling. I never once got better than any, because all 109 have been doing it for 30 years. I was 22, and I just wasn't ever going to compete with them on the knowledge of the product. So I had to differentiate myself. No matter how much I studied the product, I was never going to know it like they did. If I wanted to be the best salesperson, I had to outcompete them in other areas like emotional intelligence, connecting with customers, relationships, asking better questions than they did, being a better problem solver, being more flexible, all those kind of things. So if you want to be a great salesperson, I would spend more of your time learning the things I just mentioned, because in my opinion, they're the things that great salespeople in every field, it's what differentiates them. So a great way to get started. Have you ever read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie?
Yes, I just read it 2 weeks ago. Yes, I finished.
Good man. I love it. So books like that, I keep reading books like that. Read 50 books like that. And don't read them and take notes, but just read them. Things will start to click in your head of how a good salesperson operates, how they read as many sales books as you can. And that's also going to help you when you start getting your interviews with sales managers to communicate in their language, because I promise you, all those sales managers have read those books too. They've read them all. That's how all salespeople learn how to sell, is by reading books and going out and practicing, because there's no classes on it. So I would say, if you were going to focus on the technical merits of the product or the technical merits of persuasion and negotiation, I would go all in on the latter. Know enough about the product to be dangerous, go all in on extra research and study on how to become a better influencer, a better negotiator, and a better persuader.
I would say everything that Ian said is right. What I would say, and my way of summarizing it, is this: you probably already have too much technical knowledge. You're probably going to confuse most of the clients with your ability to understand the product. What you need is a dumbed down version of the technical that they can understand. And then the jargon or the abbreviations or the nomenclature that they use in their world, and understanding how to talk about your product that way. The other thing is, if you read a book, one of Ian and mine's favorite books, Ian actually turned me on to it, was American Icon. And it's like about a guy who moved from Boeing to Ford, and his name is Mullally. And he talked, like, people would make fun of him. They're like, you don't understand the technical side. He's like, I do. I used to work at an airplane place where if the plane wasn't made right, it would come crashing out of the sky. So the technical side matters less. Sales is all about, what does your widget do for me? That's the so. The so what is sales. If I can't, like, so it does this. What does it do to my life? What does it do to my engineering cycle? What does it do to my employees? What does it do to my customers? That's the so what. If you take this product, it does this. And because it does this for you. That's the difference. My guess is you understand the technical side. Now it's about storytelling and prioritizing them, which is different than the product. You got to prioritize that person you're talking to and say, if you take this product, this is what it does for you. It's what it does for your customer. It's what it does for your bottom line.
I'm going to wrap all this up too, Milosh, with love what Frank just said there. When I say I was 110th out of 110 in technical knowledge, what that meant was when I sat in front of a customer, I didn't have the ability to bore them with details because I didn't know the details. And the reason why I went from being 110th in sales to a top 10 sales rep out of all of those guys that knew it better than me is I got really good at asking questions, and I was a better listener than all the guys that had all the knowledge. They would talk over those customers, but they didn't understand those customers because they didn't listen well. I asked questions because I didn't have anything else I could do. I didn't know how to talk much about my experience or other applications of the product. So I just listened to all these customers, and within 6 months, I was one of the most well-versed sales reps in the country at understanding the problem. And I really knew it well, and I really knew how these customers felt. And most of our sales reps didn't have that because they didn't listen. They just wanted to go talk about the newest feature, the newest technicals, the newest specs. I didn't do any of that. I just listened, and I was elite at it, at being good at understanding the customer. And because of that, I sold more. So I would say, if you can get great at that, at asking great questions and listening to your customers, the so and the so what, understanding what it means to them, what your product can do for them, you'll mop the floor with all the other sales reps.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for us before we wrap?
So I think there was a last question. If the target at the end is in 10 years or 15 years, doing or participating in the business development strategy, would the sales be the best path to know the customers, to know the market, or would you recommend doing jobs like product management, product owners, and so on?
I'm going to answer this very directly. If running a business one day, and when you say business strategy, forget business strategy, you want to run a profit center. That a profit center manager is in charge of strategy. You set the direction, you make the decisions. Really, I wouldn't call it business strategy because that makes me think of some guy who's kind of an influencer with the real decision maker. You want to be an executive. An executive runs a profit center, has to grow profit, grow sales, and you have to be strategic. I think that anyone who's ever put in one of those jobs should at some point in their career have been in sales. I feel strongly about that because I've worked for a lot of executives. I've worked for some that have been in sales, some that have never been in sales. The one of them never been in sales just don't get it at a certain level. And the sooner you can take a sales job and learn that, you can apply it in any job. And then if you want to go into marketing, having been in sales is really helpful if you want to go into marketing, because you won't be testing a bunch of ideas and getting a bunch of leads that can't close. The closer you can get to the customer early in your career, the better off your career will be. I feel very strongly about that. I'm very grateful that my first job after I graduated was directly involved with the customer right out of the gate. It made a profound impact on my career.
What I say in this is slightly different, but it's thematically similar. The path doesn't really matter. It's what do you learn in the path? How do you synthesize it? How can you explain it to either people you manage, people you work with, people you're trying to sell? And then ultimately, how do you utilize that knowledge to run something? How do you use it to set direction, to manage a department, to run a company? I have 50 people who look up to me, and I'm ultimately responsible for. So all the steps along the way may or may not have happened in the right order, but I learned from it. I synthesized from it. I've taken it with me, and I am not as good in the field or as technical as some of the people that may be in those roles. And my knowledge is maybe dated, but the point is I understand it, I can empathize with it, and I can manage it because I get it. So those are the leave behinds that all these little jobs give you. And then what you do with it is how do you manage the customer, the process, the experience? Those are the things. So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to take a path. The path can change. It's what you learn along the way.
Great.
Milosh, this has been an incredible pleasure, man. Hopefully this was helpful to you.
Thank you so much. It's really helpful for me, and I really let's say got new ideas about how to do it. And really, thank you so much for accepting my request or invitation to discuss. And yes, I'm really eager to listen to the episode because it's first time for me.
Love it.
Wait till you see the image we picked for you. You're gonna love it.
Oh, it's gonna be great. The images we put in front of your face are gonna be great. Maybe a talking pickle. Maybe we get some of those like TikTok screens over it, so you can't tell who he is exactly.
You can choose the best for you. No problem. I trust you.
Tell all your friends in France about us. We're growing like wildfire out there in Europe, obviously.
I don't know if it will be surprising for you, but I already have one friend who recommended your podcast for me, and he's living in France.
Look at that. Look at this, Frank.
So I'm not the only one.
Viva la France. I love it.
Exactly.
Milosh, we wish you nothing but the best of luck.
Let us know how it goes too. Stay in touch with us. Let us know how it goes along the way. We're fans of yours now. We're rooting for you. So you've got two guys that are pulling for you, man.
Yeah, we're happy to help if the opportunity presents itself. And you're welcome to join me in reminding Ian he remains a son of a bitch.
See you, Milosh.
Thank you. See you. Bye.